the biggest thing is in helping people see the validity of online engagement, because there's like this two-tier system in people's minds. Like if we are not all in the building together, then we're not being a church. It's like, well, there's different ways that people connect.
Hey, Pastor John, how's it going? Frank with Tithely. Great to have you on the show today.
Oh, thanks. I've been looking forward to it. I think, this is going to be a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, like on most shows, we interview a ton of pastors. You're the lead pastor at your church. You've been there for a while. And I think it's just great to have other church leaders and pastors kind of hear stories. So I'd love for you to just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you got into ministry and eventually how you got to being the lead pastor at the church you're at.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's like anyone, it's been quite the journey. I look back even to where I started. I came out of a just super dysfunctional family and lots of brokenness. And the only thing that kind of held it together for me was the local church, the First Baptist Church in Tucson, Arizona, which unfortunately is closed now.
You're from Arizona originally.
Yeah, I grew up in Phoenix, graduated high school in Tucson, and church meant everything to me. And so God used a kind of a series of circumstances to bring me into ministry, and worked for 10 years doing student ministry, 8 years doing college ministry, and then transitioned into my lead spots. And been thankful for the opportunity to be a part of leading congregations and helping guide churches in fulfilling the mission that God gives to them. Because, in my view, like everything hinges on mission and vision. And that's the biggest part of my role. There's lots of upfront public stuff, but really it's the behind the scenes. Hey, let's keep moving in this direction. That's what's really crucial and important.
Where did you, in terms of college ministry, what college or colleges were you leading ministry at?
So it was a really odd spot to do college ministry. It was back in Phoenix, and it was a church. If you know the valley at all, Phoenix area, it was in the northwest part of the valley, and there are no residential schools around it. So it's a lot of commuter colleges. There was a Bible college that was nearby. We had some students who had come from that. That was a residential school. Every semester we'd have like one or two guys who are attending a motorcycle mechanics institute. They were a part of our college ministry. So you think Phoenix and you think like Arizona State.
Right.
We were an hour away from Arizona State. So we were an unusual college ministry in that the students we had who graduated high school, like they all went away for college and then they would come back. So most college ministries, their summer attendance really declined. Our summer attendance was like our peaks because kids from a big church, it was like 2,500 people. So all those students would return home. And so our college ministry would be, 100 people at that time, and then drop back down to 70 or 80 during the school year.
Right. Yeah. Man, I was converted in college at San Diego State. So, man, I have fond memories of kind of our college ministry days and just the experience of becoming a Christian and doing it on kind of a university campus. And some of my best friends to this day are from that time. All the guys in my wedding and best friends, like a couple of the guys that I was there with, or I still go to church with today. So it's great memories of that time for me personally. So anyways, that's always fun to chat about.
Yeah, no, and I love college ministry. It really was like formational for me in my journey as a pastor. Like as I preach, I try not to think through a passage like a senior pastor does. I'm thinking in terms of college ministry, because the transition from student ministry to college ministry was actually kind of rough for me because I was thinking in terms of a high school pastor, and you're like, the Bible says don't do this. And the students are like, oh, okay. And you close with a word of prayer. And you do that with a
Right,
college
right.
student, and they're like, well, why not? And I hadn't actually thought about that. And so I was like, well, I don't know. And
Yeah,
so as a college pastor, it really helped me think through, why does Paul say that we should have purity in marriage?
right.
Why does he make such a big deal about that in Ephesians 5, as opposed to just the Bible says don't do it, so don't? There's underlying reasons, and college students really wanted to know that. And so as a guy who's preaching to college ministry or college students, I think it really helped me in my development as a preacher and a communicator now.
Yeah, it's funny. I went the opposite route. Not that my full-time profession is pastoral today, but my first job out of college was a youth pastor. So I went from being in the kind of college ministry and that environment. And we did a lot of small groups and kind of like Bible studies on campus and all this kind of stuff. So I had a lot of interaction with college students. And then I went into youth ministry dealing with junior high or middle school and high school kids. And it was like, wait, this is like totally different. I have to like totally learn how to handle, like, it's just so different. Junior high, middle school, high school kids versus college. I get it. Like, it's very different.
Yeah.
But not the topic of the show.
No.
Though fun to talk about. So now you're the lead pastor at a church called Redding Christian Fellowship
Yeah,
up in
that's right.
Northern California,
Yeah.
right? Way north, as we were talking about earlier.
Way north. We're like the biggest population center north of Sacramento.
Yeah. And so you've got 800 or so people at the church in the pre-COVID days.
Correct.
And then COVID happened. So whatever, 18 months ago, I don't even know. I've lost track of the number of months. But
That's COVID.
man, what's it been like for you guys? Yeah, we're all in the fog. We're still in the
That's right.
fog. It's shocking we're still talking about it,
Yeah.
but it's real, and every church
Yeah.
is still trying to figure out. I talk to a lot of churches, a lot of pastors, and people are in different places. But like some people are really coming through it, and some people are in the middle of it still, or it just kind of depends on where they live and what their church is like.
Yeah.
But what's it? Yeah, give us 18 months in a couple of minutes. What's it been like for you guys?
So, like for everybody, it was just a crazy time. And especially at the very beginning, you were starting to hear stuff about this weird disease that they were seeing in China. And then first case happened here in the States, and it was like 3 hours away from us, in San
Right.
Francisco.
Yeah.
And so it
And like Seattle area too, right? It was kind of
Yeah.
somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, but I remember, Seattle, Washington, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and so when you think of it,
early
that's
on.
the I-5 corridor in between San Francisco or Bay Area and Seattle, and you're driving right through Redding on that. And so there was some real concern for us. And as we looked at COVID and at the response, and then seeing different guidelines come out from state of California, the California government, we had to be really flexible and adapt what we were doing. And as we looked at those things, we really tried to keep a few things in mind, because we wanted the mission of the church and the vision for what God has to us to drive some of these decisions that we were making, as well as a couple of the real key values that we have. So, as we understand church, a church is a group of people who are getting together, they're worshiping, they're taking communion, and they're learning from the Word, and they're doing that together. And so community, we're going to toss into that basket. And so as we were making the transition at the beginning of COVID, we wanted to do whatever we could to continue on in that. So what that looked like was we had online services like most of the state, for those who are trying to pay attention to the guidelines. We met together. We had worship. I taught. We encouraged people to take communion at home. And we wanted to do it live. So there were lots of churches across the country. Some of my friends they were recording everything on Thursday, which was a sweet gig, because then you have the weekend off.
Yeah.
And they're just rolling their video out, and you can make it tweak and, make it look a lot better, because you could edit it and, I didn't get that right. And so you do something different. But we wanted to say, we are doing this together. And so we did it live. We showed up at church on Sunday morning, and it was like a regular Sunday morning, except nobody was there. In fact, one of one of our associate pastors teased me. He came in because he was doing a communion meditation, and first of all, he's like, was so weird because you're just looking at the camera. And then
Right. Yeah.
secondly, he
Yeah.
said,
Talking to a camera in an empty room is hard. It's
yeah.
really hard.
And he was
No
like, John,
feedback at all.
he's like, John, I didn't think you would drive everybody away this fast. Because it's just a weird experience. And so we tried to live out what we thought was important. And then as things changed, both in the community in terms of COVID and the cases and what we were seeing, and then state of California guidelines, we tried to be as flexible as we could. And sometimes that meant we were making decisions, on Wednesday for what was coming up that Sunday. And thankfully our staff was really flexible, and we had a lot of the infrastructure already put into place in terms of live stream. We already live streamed our services each week. And
so you pre-COVID, you had already invested as a church in the AV gear and figuring out how to stream and setting it up in the sanctuary and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, and in fact, even in the year previous to COVID, we were already working to improve that. So the church has live streamed for a long time, but it wasn't the best presentation. It was kind of like, oh, we need to do this, and there are people who can't come, so we're just gonna, we'll set a camera up and they can watch. Then they added another camera. Well, then as we were working through that year leading up to COVID, we started thinking more about like, what does audio sound like? Because if you watch most live streams, the praise band sounds really bad. Where if you're in person, they actually sound pretty good. But
absolutely.
But the formatting and how you run sound and have an ability to mix it in-house and then mix it for online, because those are different mixes. We had done a lot of that work, and then we were able to just like almost seamlessly slide into live stream only. And then we continued that work to make it better and better.
Yeah. When you guys went online, how'd the church respond? Did everyone kind of jump in and watch it? Were you on YouTube or Facebook? What was your preferred destination?
So we actually did both. So we had two services, and we streamed our first service on YouTube via the actual live stream. Like the trademarked service, live stream service to YouTube. Second service we did to Facebook, just because we thought, there are going to be people who access those different platforms, and we want to reach as many people as possible.
Right. And did you see a build up over a couple of weeks and get pretty good turnout from what you could tell? I mean, online is hard to really measure, but was it a good
first
turnout?
of all, it's hard to measure, and then like Carrie Newhoff says, you have to guard against like the vanity metrics, and you're like, well, that's one view. That was probably like a family of 3, so we're going to count that, as we're trying to gauge attendance. So that's one thing we did, is we just kind of quit counting because it was tough to figure out kind of exactly where we were. But at the beginning, a little maddening
trying to worry about that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. At the beginning, and it's been so long now, I can't remember the actual numbers. But
no worries. I'm just gauging the church kind of going through this time. So more asking just the general. You went online. That's a big shock, right? I remember our church goes online and it's like, we're all on YouTube. It was terrible at the beginning, but we got better over time, right? So it was a tough time for everybody.
So no, we had really good engagement. We had hundreds and hundreds of views. If I recall correctly, we were getting like 600, 700 views on a weekend. So by the time Monday rolled around, we were pushing views to where we were like, we're probably engaging most of the congregation this way. Mm-hmm. Now, like every congregation, there's some people who, well, I don't have a computer, I don't have the internet. That's less and less. But we're like, well, sorry, trying to trying to, so for some people, what we did was we burned DVDs and we would drive them to people throughout the
Wow.
week, just trying to accommodate as many people as we could.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's the first time I've heard that. Like recording the service, putting it on DVD and driving it out to folks. I mean, that's cool. That's cool that you guys just did whatever you could to help people through that time.
And another really cool thing about it is the guys who were delivering it were two high schoolers, and they weren't doing school,
Yeah.
and so it was like, hey, here's a way you can serve Jesus, and so they hopped in their car and they ate McDonald's and listened to loud music and delivered DVDs to people who didn't have the internet.
That is awesome. That is so, I love that story. I feel like that story is one of those like hidden gems of how churches were just serving their community, like working hard to figure it out in a crazy time and doing things like that. I've heard stories of, calling every member in the church personally every week, or, driving by, dropping off food, or doing like crazy, giving away, like partnering with local like pizza places and going to, Walmart and sitting in the parking lot and handing out food to people during this, just all kinds of stories of things that churches wouldn't normally do, but to serve their community and serve their people and serve the people around them.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that kind of came out because I think that's pretty cool.
Oh, well, thanks.
Surprising that people still had DVD players, I guess, in the age of streaming. So
I know I have people in our church who give me DVDs all the time, and I'm like, thank you, and then I give it back to them. And I'm like, I don't have a DVD player.
Yeah, I can't play this.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I do in my car.
Yeah. I mean, okay, let's fast forward, right? So 18 months goes by and you guys are back in the building, and probably like every other church went through a lot of variations of what that looked like over the course of a year and a half. But now you're back in the building. How are you blending church online and church in the building? And what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced in figuring that out?
So there are a couple of big challenges. Thankfully for us, technology has not been one of those. We have a staff member who's pretty adept at things.
Yeah.
He's our worship pastor. He handles our IT and technical stuff as well. And so he's helped us stay at least ahead of the curve in terms of how we're able to connect with people. Honestly, one of the biggest hindrances that we've had is just some people who are cranky about it, who are like, we ought to be standing up against the government, and this is wrong, and we're bowing to a corrupt government, and all of these things. And
right.
I just can't get around what Romans 13 and Titus 3 and 1 Peter 3 say. In as much as we can, we need to be respectful of authority. And so we have like our baseline. Here's what it means to be a church, and we're going to continue on and doing what we can. And so there's some people who've left the church because I didn't take a stand, and I'm not standing out on the in front of the courthouse or the city hall and doing things. And that's an issue where I have to say, here's my conviction, here's what I believe to be true about Scripture, true about the church, and here's what it means to be a church. And as long as we can do this, we're going to be a church.
Right.
And so that's been a little bit of an obstacle, is trying to help people navigate that and understand, what it means to have a biblical response as opposed to a political or societal response to it.
Right.
In terms of other responses, one issue that we've run into is with people like who don't have internet, who can't connect that way. So how do we engage with them? And again, making phone calls, dropping off DVDs, doing what we can to continue to connect. We called a couple of times during the shutdown. We called everybody in the church, and when you have a church of 800, that's not a small thing, because that's 800.
That's a lot of phone calls.
That's weekly attendance. We've got 2,000 people on our our list of people who have
Right.
some sort of affiliation. And so helping them to navigate that. The the biggest thing is in helping people see the validity of online engagement. You know, because there's like this two-tier system in people's minds. Like if we are not all in the building together, then we're not being a church. It's like, well,
Right.
there's different ways that people connect. And, you know, admittedly, some of that comes from an older demographic and they don't understand what it means to be a digital native. You know, someone who's
Right.
grown up and they can't remember when there wasn't an iPhone.
100%.
And
Yeah. Like my kids, I've got triplet 9-year-old boys and they're going to grow up knowing what an iPhone is and an iPad is. And it's just how they do life.
yeah, and asking the question, why do we say hang up the phone? You know, you and I, we have the satisfaction if there's a phone call we didn't like, we
Yeah.
slam it down. You can't do that with an iPhone. And so helping some of our people understand, especially in leadership, there simply are people who connect differently, and
Right.
we need to be able to reach them. And if we think that they think the way that we think, then we're not going to be able to help them to engage. What's
Right.
been
Right.
interesting in all of this is we have a couple now Zoom Bible studies or community groups that are meeting, and a lot of those are not populated by young folks. They're populated by some of our seniors who really want to
Right.
connect, but they maybe still are kind of hesitant to get out, or they look and they say, "We're developing great connection. I live 30 minutes that way, and you live 30 minutes that way. Instead of driving like 2 hours between us to make this thing happen, let's have a Zoom meeting." And we're seeing some of that happen in a really good way.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, all really interesting and kind of like I feel like I hear that even in my own church, just the struggle of getting people back together, getting them in the building, and by in the building, whatever that kind of some people are still meeting outdoors, some
Right.
people are having multiple services and all the things, but getting people back into that community but blending that with this online thing is still a thing. And you can
Yeah.
do the midweek service on Zoom, or you can do the Zoom Bible study, or you can do, the Zoom leaders meeting and not have everyone together. And not that you do that all the time, but right, you can augment it and people, I think people enjoyed some of that, and then there's the challenge of, the people that were, really kind of core members, committed or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But, they were there on the weekends and they're active in their small groups and those kind of things. And they're like not showing up in person now. Right.
Right.
And as a pastor, like, how do I reach out to those people? Cause they're enjoying watching church online and maybe getting comfortable. So I've heard that too. Like, how do you deal with, the folks that maybe have gotten a little comfortable with kind of consuming church instead of being involved in it?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, and it's even a little trickier here in California, because here in California the restrictions really loosened up on June 15th.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the beginning of summer, and so we're looking at numbers and engagement, and we're like, I'm not certain we're going to really understand where we are until we hit fall. Because,
Right.
Summer's a downtime anyway. And then you look at the number of people who are traveling and doing vacations because they couldn't at all last summer. And so they
Oh
have all
yeah.
this pent up, I need to be out and doing things. It's been tricky to know, like, who's not here because they're mad, who's not here because they're watching online, who's not here because they're traveling, who's not here because of whatever reason.
Right.
And
Yeah. Who's not
reaching,
here because they are legitimately still concerned or maybe high risk or
yeah.
whatever. Right. And that's still a big part of things.
Yeah, and then I had a conversation with a guy at the Y. He attends another church here in town. Really invested in ministry. Is a former Youth for Christ missionary. I mean, he loves the church, And he said, yeah, I probably will never go back to church.
Hmm.
And he says, I just like what I'm doing in engaging online. And so
Wow.
how how do you minister to him? You know?
How do you, yeah, digest that? How
Yeah.
are you guys doing the blended experience? So really practically, just church on Sunday, you're doing it in person in the building, but you're also keeping your online kind of experience. But that can be hard because now your staff is putting on two things and they're different. Or are you just kind of live streaming from the building and not, putting extra effort into the online component?
So we've made a couple of little tweaks, partly because we were, like I said, I think we were a little ahead of the curve in terms of live streaming, especially for a church our size. We're not a church of
Yeah.
3,000 people who,
Right.
are having national engagement, and so for our situation, I think we were doing well already. So what we have done is we've tried to make a tweak in communication from the platform, trying to ensure that we are engaging the cameras from time to time. So we even made a little tweak. We've added 2 cameras since the pandemic. So in our auditorium, we actually have 4 different cameras.
Okay.
And we added tally lights, on the platform, I can see which camera is live. And so as I'm preaching, I try to
Right.
remember it's work. I try to remember I'm going to engage that camera when the light's
Right.
on, just from time to time,
Right.
just so that the people who are at home or who are watching online feel like they're part of the experience. Because again, we're doing
Okay.
this together.
Yeah.
We try to remember as we are welcoming people. If you're here, we're grateful you're here. If you're joining us online, I will even add sometimes if you're watching this live or you're watching it sometime in the future. We're just glad to be able to connect with you. There are different ways that you can engage with us. We
Yeah.
use a platform, Church Online now, to be
Yeah.
able to show our live stream services. So there's a really full functioning chat aspect of that. We try to have someone on there who's a live stream host to be able to welcome
Okay.
people, to maybe connect with people, say, hey, if we can pray for you about anything, just let us know. Then we'll get some of those requests passed on to our staff so we can pray for them. Again, just looking to see however we can engage with people even when they're not here physically.
Right. 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 And so your AV team in the building kind of has it all set up so they can be kind of producing, if you will, the online service and the in-person service kind of simultaneously.
Yeah, so we've expanded our live stream team, throughout the pandemic. So on a Sunday morning, I think we have 2 manned cameras. We have 2 people who are doing switching, and then someone who's monitoring the audio mix.
Okay. Got it. And somebody kind of as the moderating chat and the prayer requests and those kind of things, it sounds like you've got somebody doing that as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you've been living it, but to me, when I hear that, like you've put some attention and resource behind, the pre-COVID way and the today way, like you've, allocated some resources into doing some of this stuff a little bit more, right? So like you said,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
2 cameras and a person online and somebody thinking about the AV mixing and all that. Did that, was that shift difficult, or was it just kind of like as you went through the year and a half, it just kind of happened?
Oh no. So we try to be pretty intentional about the way that we do things, and so as we look at it, again, we're looking. Here's what it means to be a church. What do we need to have in order to do it? And so, don't tell him I said this, but like when our AV guy comes and has a request for expenditure, I don't even ask questions. I'm just like, yes,
Right.
because we need to do whatever it takes to connect with people.
Right.
Our mission statement is we're helping people take their next step in following Jesus, and whatever it takes to do that, we want to do. And sometimes it means monetary expenditures. Sometimes it means energy expenditures. There's always a metric in that. I tell our staff we have a finite amount of ministry resources. and I call that money, time, and energy. Those are ministry resources. We're not afraid to spend that, but we just want to make sure that we've got good kingdom impact for that. And right
Yeah.
now in this season, if we have to spend ministry resources to increase our kingdom impact through online engagement, then we're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. It, I, I s- I hear, especially, the big mega churches that have a lot more resources and have put more time into this, and even pre-COVID, we're doing a lot of things online. That's one situation, but most churches are relatively small numbers wise and don't have big staff, and it's hard to do both things, to do online and to do in person. And as things have opened back up, I find churches reverting back to just, we're back in the building and we're going to do it the old way. And maybe we'll stream by having a camera up, and that's kind of it. And I get it. Like, I get that it's hard work and it takes more staffing or resources or corralling volunteers to come out. Like, it takes more effort to do both. But I just get a little discouraged, I guess, even like myself, right? I'm like, oh man, there's such an opportunity here. And
Yeah.
we learned so much over the year and a half. Every church learned how to do church online better,
Right.
right? We were
Right.
all forced to. Everybody had to learn. So everybody went from pretty bad to like halfway decent, or maybe even good, right?
Right.
Like, had to go through that. And so, like, keep pushing, like, keep driving. And I love that it sounds like that's what you're doing. Like, you're at least going to keep pushing, keep driving. You're going to invest in the AV or the online. You're going to help move some staff to do some other things. Because I think that'll pay off. I think that's the future of church, is
Oh,
this hybrid
100%.
in-person and online thing that we have to figure out.
Yeah, 100%. And, I think it just comes down to, what's church for? You know, I, I am not convinced that church is for a bunch of believers to hang out in the same room together. We need to do whatever we can to reach people with the gospel.
Yeah.
And if you just want to hang out in the same room together, then you can do that.
Have
But
dinner.
yeah, but in our case, we want to do whatever we can to engage people with the gospel, and that's
Yeah.
what it's about. It's not about feeling good about being in the same room, or that our numbers are better, post COVID than they were pre COVID, or whatever.
Right.
We want to reach people with the gospel.
Yeah. Amen. I love that. I got a couple quick rapid fire kind of questions I want to ask you, but in wrapping all this up, do you have any thoughts about, the next 12 months, or just kind of future thinking on, what your vision is for, your church and your little part of the kingdom, and how you're making an impact, and how that blends this hybrid online, offline world?
Yeah. So, as we think about moving forward, one of the difficult things is it's been so hard. It was so hard through the shutdown to know where we were, like to actually know where we were in terms of reaching people and engaging people. So then it was hard to be able to gauge where we're going, because it's hard to know that when you don't know where you are. And so one of the blessings of this season is being able to figure out, okay, here's where we are, here's where our culture is, our community up here in the North State and in Reading, and so beginning to put some thoughts about how we connect with our community. So our values, as we start off, our first value is we focus on Jesus. The Bible points to him, so he's gonna be the center of everything we do. Second one is we love Reading, and we believe God's called us to be a part of the community he's entrusted to us. And so as we think about that, this opportunity now allows us to engage with people as we're seeing some things happen physically, but also then to engage with our community digitally. So, for example, we just hosted the Global Leadership Summit, and our in-person attendance was actually pretty terrible. There's just no other way around it. But they showed like 7% of the people who attended the summit this year did it at a host site. Almost
Wow.
everybody was online. Well, we had people in our community that we were able to connect with and then get them connected to the summit online.
It came online, yeah.
Trying to leverage resources like that. I think as things continue to open up, it will allow us we do a lot of work in our public schools. We're starting to see some volunteers be able to go back into there. We've done some kind of virtual stuff in that doesn't pay the same kingdom, to have the same kingdom impact as being together with them. So it's a little bit of both of seeing all those increase.
Yeah. Seeing it all kind of happen. Well, very cool. A couple quick questions as we wrap it up. Who's somebody you've been most influenced by over the years? A mentor, an author, anyone that you can think of.
So 2 thoughts on authors. One, Andy Stanley, and his thoughts, Deep and Wide, is like right at the top of my reading list. Another one, Henry Nouwen. Henry Nouwen and his thoughts on spirituality, and the book In the Name of Jesus. One of the most instrumental books for me in terms of being a spiritual leader. Really fabulous stuff. In terms of connection, as I look at the lead pastors that I worked with throughout the years, they all spoke to me in different ways. Some in terms of how I lead my family, some in terms of how I shepherd people, and some in terms of how I lead staff in having a passion for the gospel.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you kind of answered the second question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What's a book everybody should read? Something that has had a major impact on you?
Oh man. So Deep and Wide.
The Bible, of course. The Bible. We'll say the Bible first.
All right. Thank you. I forgot I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to say that. So, but Deep and Wide, fabulous. In the Name of Jesus, really, really powerful. Just in terms of leadership, there was this really, really great book called Extreme Ownership. It was written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Lessons from being in the SEALs, like the SEAL teams in Iraq. I think really great thoughts about leading an organization. Another really fabulous book that I think everyone should read, hardly anyone knows about it, is called Switch by Chip and Dan Heath. It's about leading organizational change. Really, really great thoughts.
Yeah, love that. Okay, last one. Give me a podcast you're listening to right now that people should check out.
A podcast that I listen to right now, Modern Church Leader by Tithely.
Plug, love it.
So in my context, I don't listen to a ton of podcasts because I don't have a long drive. If I lived in San Diego and I'm in the car for a half an hour, it'd be different. My commute's like 5 minutes. I listen to, in terms of spiritual input, we listen to a podcast called Pray As You Go. And it's just really great, just thinking about scripture and, some reflection questions. Secondly, Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast, really, really great. And Carrie Newhoff would be another one.
Yeah, love those. No, those are good. Well, Pastor, this has been great. Where can folks go check out kind of your church and what you guys are doing online?
So our website's rcfellowship.org, and you can go and see things there. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube, and we're excited about the future.
All the places, rcfellowship.org. Well, Pastor John, thanks so much. Thanks for watching, everybody, listening or watching this online. Appreciate you guys, and we will be back soon with another episode. Thanks, guys.